I am for the separation of stadium and state. Who's with me? Jonah Goldberg joins the good guys on this recurring topic, making the excellent and sage observation that sports and politics mix like oil and water. I've never been a sports fanatic. Well, I used to be a lot more than I am now. But this is Jonah Goldberg's comment. In fact, I'm the kind of guy a lot of sports obsessives can't stand. I tend not to pay attention to anything until the playoffs, and even then it's entertainment more than passion. This can be a disadvantage in real life because, particularly among men, sports talk is a kind of safe space and common tongue all at once. Or at least it used to be. I've seen it a million times in Washington, particularly in cable news green rooms. Two politicians or pundits who are diametrically opposed to each other ideologically manage to be friendly with each other solely because they can talk about the Nationals roster or the Redskins' terrible coaching. I've also seen the same thing happen at airports, bars, and airport bars, in line at the DMV, and in almost every other public space. Rich, poor, black, white, liberal, conservative, southerner, northerner, people from all walks of life can engage in friendly conversation about this widely shared cultural institution. Hey, fantasy sports! I mean, they're even making ads off of that. You know, showing two guys talking about their fantasy teams and this guy going back and forth, and they're avidly interested and passionate. And then what would happen if there wasn't fantasy sports? You understand, fantasy sports is not something to this day, I understand the appeal of. But in the scenario where there's no fantasy sports, they're just kind of two guys just kind of standing there, talking about the weather, or hey, I got a watch and it has numbers on it, but it doesn't have numbers on it. Well, how can you keep the time? Oh, I checked my phone. I was going to wear shorts today, but I decided to wear pants instead. Just the most utterly banal conversations you could imagine. Other topics can play the same role, but none matches the scale of sports. I remember when ESPN hired Rush Limbaugh to be a football commentator in 2003. Remember when he would throw the challenge flag from over on a different part of the set? In fact, I seem to recall that Donovan McNabb, that's back when black quarterbacks were still kind of a novelty. And now, gosh, is there a quarterback is there a team in the NFL that doesn't have a black quarterback now? I mean, I don't really pay attention to those things, but I mean, I'd have to go down the list. I mean, my team's quarterback is black, but who cares? He's Russell Wilson. He's awesome. Anyway, Limbaugh was clearly qualified on the merits, as far as I could tell. He's a talented broadcaster and knows a lot about football. But I thought it was a mistake, since Limbaugh is also a deeply polarizing figure. Moreover, I didn't think Limbaugh would be able to avoid applying his political views to sports. I don't begrudge him that. I'd have a hard time biting my tongue, too. Well, I was right. The famous conversationalist said something controversial. What did ESPN expect? Shows you how long ago that was, 13 years ago. Do you think well, let's just put it this way. Keith Olbermann had a sports broadcasting career, and then he went over to MSNBC and became a political hack, and then he went back to ESPN for a while. So he was on, in other words, he lasted a lot longer in sports media than Rush Limbaugh did. And, of course, there's no way Limbaugh could even get on there now. Now, I have no interest in revisiting the specific controversy. Rather, I bring up the episode because I remember reading a great column by the very liberal Washington Post writer E.J. Dionne. The issue here is not that Limbaugh is a conservative, Dionne wrote. He didn't care about the personal politics of sports commentators. No. Dionne's objection was with interjecting politics into sports when it was, well, Limbaugh was conservative back then. If it's liberal, well, then that's different. Keith Olbermann, for example. Most of us who love sports want to forget about politics when we watch games, Dionne wrote. Sports, like so many other voluntary activities, creates connections across political lines. And then he added, politicizing everything from literature to music to painting and sports was once a habit of the left, and it still is. The Communist Party's now defunct newspaper once had a sports column called Out in Left Field. Ha 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 ha. Now it's the turn of the right to politicize everything. I wish. I'm not sure that was entirely true then. It wasn't, clearly, but it's definitely not true now. For instance, San Francisco 49ers backup quarterback Colin Kaepernick has decided that he cannot stand for the national anthem because America oppresses black people, says the man with the $128 million contract. To me, this is bigger than football, and it would be selfish on my part to look the other way. Oh, and by the way, he's the backup quarterback to someone named Blaine Gabbert. He's gone on at sanctimonious and tedious length about the alleged problem of police brutality and other Black Lives Matter propaganda. Now, I think this is ludicrous on any number of fronts. Kaepernick isn't being asked to salute rogue cops or even cops generally. He's being asked to show respect not just to the flag, but to a non-partisan custom. Instead, he offers a blanket indictment of America itself and vows to hold his compliance hostage to his personal assessment of complicated social issues. That's not in a quarterback's job description any more than it is in a plumber's, to say nothing of a backup quarterback, whose job description consists mainly of holding a clipboard. As Kaepernick's stunt has metastasized to other teams, the NFL has responded to this lugubrious moral preening and bravery on the cheap with the same rubber-spined resolve we've come to expect from most large corporations. And it's not just happening in the NFL. As David French has detailed, progressives are weaponizing sports all over the place, as we discussed in a video the other day on the Hart Starboard radio channel, including North Carolina, where the NCAA is boycotting the state over a disagreement about gender dysphoria issues. My point is not that the issues athletes care about are illegitimate. Kaepernick is right that some issues are bigger than football, but that is an argument for keeping them out of football. And it applies to right-wing issues as well as left-wing. Religion is bigger than football too, which is why we try to keep it from intruding in public life in a divisive way. Indeed, that's largely the point of America. I mean, remember, I'm old enough to remember this, where politics wasn't everything. I mean, it was possible to go through life in this country very rarely even encountering politics. Politics was something that happened around election time every couple of years. Or however, local elections and state elections and federal elections, whatever. And indeed, local politics was more important than national politics. Not anymore, quite clearly. Now everything is political. And what do you know, our culture and country are coming apart at the seams concurrently with that trend and development. Gee, maybe there's a connection there. This country was founded on the notion that politics should not govern every important issue in our lives, that there should be a refuge from it, that life should be vastly more than politics. Politics is one small part of life in this country. That's a very constitutional originalist concept, isn't it? That is what liberty means. And that, not police brutality, is what the flag is supposed to represent. No wonder Kaepernick and his huge fro, which he put back down into cornrows recently, judging by the game on Monday night, and his fans, no wonder he and his fans have such a problem with it. And I must say, it would have been better to just ignore it entirely and just stand up and acknowledge and honor the flag. But I will say this about what was feared to be a massive team-wide protest by my team, the once and future world champion Seattle Seahawks. What they did was probably about the best thing that you could do in that situation. Everybody, players and coaches, linked arms on the sidelines in what was billed as a stance of unity, team unity. And if they were going to do anything, that was about the best thing that they could do, because it did not divide the team, and it did not divide the team from the 12s. Unity for the country, honoring the flag, and unfortunately acknowledging, there was an element that it was a show of support for Colin Kaepernick, but it was done in a way that was it was the least divisive way to do it that they could come up with. So while I would have preferred just ignoring it altogether, now we can move on with the business of bringing the Lombardi Trophy back to the Pacific Northwest.
The Seahawks are going back to the Super Bowl!